I'm Aisling, and you are about to listen to the second episode of a No One Likes Us Talking special with the legendary fan, Jeff Burnige. Before that, just a reminder that our weekly Our Millwall fan show returns on Friday, the 22nd of July. Don't miss it. Enjoy.
Hello, I'm Jeff Burnige, and on the 29th of April 1972, I had the privilege to witness what I believed was the first ever promotion for Millwall to the top flight of the Football League. On the 29th of April 2022, I had the opportunity to host Millwall players from that day: Dennis Burnett, Alan Dorney, Steve Brown and Bryan King. It all took place at the Millwall Community Trust's Lions Centre, where we relived the memories of exactly 50 years ago and more with a great audience. I hope you enjoyed the first episode, and here is the second part covering the stories told from that night. Who can remember that first game we were talking about, the game at Bristol City? Anyone got any recollections of that? Anybody?
I had 3 goals in.
I think we came from behind. Did we come from behind?
I can't remember.
Didn't Woody do... Woody was there then, wasn't he?
No, you got the wrong era completely, I think. It was 3-3. I can't remember much about it. I know we came from behind at least twice. No, that was the Sunderland game. We were 3-1 down at Sunderland, and we scored 2 in the last 2 or 3 minutes, didn't we? 2 or 3 each.
Yeah.
Possibly scored the equaliser.
Remember that? But yes. Didn't Billy Hughes play for them? And that little lad Kerr, the winger.
Yeah.
Probably Kerr, yeah.
Tough boy, wasn't he? They're playing the cup final.
Their team was actually the team that beat Leeds at the cup final the following 72.
Was it?
Yeah, all but one player.
Jimmy Montgomery in goal and...
Didn't Dennis Stewart play?
Jim.
Yeah.
Dennis Stewart.
You remember that programme, that Zoo programme? Yeah, because he had funny eyes, Jim, didn't he? You know. And that was his nickname, Clarence, they called him, after that line, was it? Oh, yeah. Boss-side line. Yeah. Good lad he is. Right, there's a nice question here.
No question, Charlie Austin's just scored. It's
about time he did us a favour, isn't it?
For his own team, mate.
That'll be the first favour he's done since he played for Swindon against us in the playoff.
He was unlucky.
He says it bobbled, didn't he?
Well, let's see how that goes. How long was that?
31 minutes.
Gone. Or to
He
go.
scored on 31, I don't know how long it was.
Over there.
I was saying, you got a reporter on that Bristol City game you won.
What can you remember about it?
Nothing, I wasn't there.
Was anybody playing in that game that we haven't mentioned as playing in the Preston game?
This is our first game of the season, yeah, 3-3. It says, this is Benny Fenton's report on the game in the programme the week after.
Yeah.
So he says, at one point we were in trouble with being 2 goals adrift. Harry Kipps off the field injured. Dennis dropped in at left back. Gordon Bolland took over from Dennis. And Dave Coxill came on in midfield. 2-goal deficit to make up. And by half time we've drawn level with goals from Eamon Dunphy and Doug Alder.
Oh. Dave Coxill. Now I do remember him. Do you remember Dave Coxill?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Well, tell us about Dave Coxill.
Dave, what? Do you remember when we used to train over Senegal Fields?
That's where the den is now.
What about the car?
Yeah. He's come back. You know where Zampa Road is? Up that hill, wasn't it?
It's there.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
They had on collision, didn't they?
Well, there was...
Who was in the car? Was
me, Alan Garner,
yes.
Pat Lally.
That's it.
And there was someone else. I was sitting in the middle at the back. Alan Garner was in the passenger seat. As we've gone over the bridge, he stuck it in 4th gear, and you're thinking to yourself, well, you're going too fast. And the fella's indicated to do a right. Well, he's gone. He's overtook him. As the fella's done a right, he's hit Dave, and we've hit a wall. Like, side on. Bosh. Some of the players were going along in their cars, coming back to the den, and I'll never forget, he got out and said, "Did you see what he done?" Well, Alan Garner, he was under the seat. We got out and said, "Dave, you overtook the fella," and he didn't realise what he had done. He was just lovely. It was an MG 1100.
it was one of them. I think we mentioned it earlier.
Had a shooting break, wasn't
like
it?
a Wolsey thing or something, like one of them small Wolseys. But
Had the
it didn't
wood.
matter. It was in a terrible state.
Yeah. He broke the car off. He only bought it the night before.
What was he like as a player?
Who, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, he marked Rodney Marsh out, didn't he?
That's like
Yeah.
QPR,
QPR, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he
He was just a man-to-man marker, wasn't he?
yeah, he wasn't very good with a ball.
No,
But Benny stuck him on Rodney Marsh, and
that was it, yeah.
his glory was that he was interviewed on Match of the Day.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonder what became of Dave, because
He's a minicab driver, I heard.
he must be around somewhere.
He's a minicab driver.
I bet he can't get insurance very easily.
No,
Do you remember him, Al?
Yeah,
Where was he from, do you know?
Ealing.
Yeah,
He was West
played-
London, you're right, he was.
He played in the same schools team as Steve Perman.
Did he?
Played
And he went to
Steve Perman grew up in Greenford, I know that.
He played in the same side, schoolboy side, as him.
How do you know that?
Because I talked to Steve Perman now and again, and he sent me his book, and there's some pictures in there of Dave Coxall in the team. And I sent him, he used to play at Millwall, David Coxall. He said, yeah, I remember him. But
Do you remember him, Dennis?
Yeah, I remember him quite well, but he didn't last very long, did he?
No.
he went to Gillingham, I think,
I think he was more famous for his bird.
for his driving.
He's driving, yeah, but his bird. He was a young bird with a big. Yeah, she had a big pair of tits. He would
No wonder he didn't last
he
very
would
long
tell
as a
you
footballer.
everything that they used to get up to.
I think we can leave that. He wouldn't
He was more famous for his girlfriend
So
than he was.
he played with two up front as well then. Thank you.
Dave.
he couldn't put his hand on it.
I'd like another question or statement from there.
That game again, it said, go on this. It was 2-2 at half time and then 3-2 down, not long left, and it said Bolland went the whole length of the field and scored a 30-yard drive. And if Barry Bridges' last minute effort had gone in, we would not have been very popular in Bristol that night. We were very popular in Bristol for
I was definitely at the game, but you know, I can't remember too much. I do remember us being behind.
Yeah, it's like we were 2-0 down.
Who scored for
half
them?
time.
Who scored for them?
Galley, didn't it? John Galley.
Oh, he was.
You mentioned in that car crash.
Yeah, Chris Garland.
Oh yes, Chris Garland.
Yeah.
Fair-haired, curly fair-haired man.
He went to Chelsea.
But Stevie Brown mentioned that car crash. Pat Lally went on to be something big in the PFA, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he played a league game for Millwall, so he's in the record books as having played a game for Millwall. I think he played some underage team for Ireland as well, if I'm not mistaken.
But we had a few players like that, didn't we? We had Mickey Kelly.
Yeah.
He played a few
But
games.
they didn't get in the team, didn't they? That was the problem. We had some decent young players, but they couldn't get in the team. Mickey Kelly did. He played quite a few games. Remember him, Dennis?
Yeah.
Charlton boy, what did he come from?
Erith.
You mentioned somebody else
Erith.
from that car crash.
Alan Garner.
Alan Garner.
Yeah, he was a good
We were
player.
talking about him earlier, weren't we? He was decent. Couldn't get in the side because of these people here.
Yeah. And Luton.
How was he going to get in with Kitch, Dennis, and Alan in front of him? He was a young player coming up, so he moved on, didn't he? I think Watford and then Luton, or the other way
No,
around.
Luton and then Watford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he was local. I wonder where he is
The
these
Elephants.
days.
Camberwell,
Down
yeah.
Pompey.
Never tell me friend.
I think he's living down in Portsmouth.
What's your memories of him, Hal? Anything you can remember of Alan Garner?
No, you did say he was a pretty good player, yeah, but I mean, we had a fairly settled side,
Yeah.
and unless somebody got injured or you had a really bad game, you turned out again the following week.
And it was one sub. You know,
Yeah.
so that's probably my phone back there. No, I turned it off. You had one sub, so it was difficult to get known unless you got put in the team. And
What size would the squads have been back then? I'm a bit too young to
What
know.
would you say, Dennis?
Where they got
Size of
to
the
20,
squad?
24 now? What?
13.
And we used about 16 players, didn't we?
Yeah, that was only ever probably Paul
the team probably come from 14 players at the most. Wow. I mean, we used to have more training because the kids would join us to make up the numbers, but we didn't have 30 sort of on the staff.
Like now, yeah.
Not like now they have, you know. I mean, they have all these academy groups and everything else. We had the first team and sort of half a dozen other ones that were on the verge. So it wasn't very big at all.
When I was at the Luton game the other week, I counted all the support staff walking across the pitch with the players.
I don't know.
It was probably about 28, 30 people. Most like madness.
No, he used to take 12 away, didn't he? The team and the sub.
And then one for the kit.
Yeah, and then that was Jack.
You always take a couple of kids away to help Jack with the kit when you're an apprentice away.
Yeah.
There was the story about that era. I think he was the manager. Was it called Jimmy McInerney? Do you remember him or?
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Remember him? The story was that I think he was Sheffield United, and the story was they got one of the kit lads to get in the kit hamper. There was a big kit box, right? And he got in the kit box before the game, and they come in to do the little team talk, and he said something, and the voice went, "Rubbish!" And he looked round. Who said that? Right? And he went, "What you're going to do is at the corners, you're going to mark something rubbish." Right? And the lad was hiding in the kit all the time.
Who was this?
Jimmy McInerney.
Was this for Millwall?
No, it's another story. Which means it's very boring for Millwall fans. But right.
Come out of the useless information book.
The reserves used to play in the combination then, and then there was the London Midweekly for a while.
Yeah.
I can remember a few of the. We've mentioned a few. Mickey Kelly, Danny O'Leary. Someone mentioned downstairs. Frankie Peterson.
Ronnie
Frankie
Alf,
Peterson. Anybody? Any observations there?
Dickie Flume.
We did say a couple of things about Frankie Peterson at Brian's previous book signing evening. Who was at that evening? Anybody? A few. So you heard us talk about Frank Peterson.
Yeah.
Right, well, for those that weren't here, shall we talk about Frank? What was your recollections of him, Brian?
Well, Frank was he was England Youth International, Frank Peterson. A good player, strong centre forward. Well, Steve was obviously playing in the youth team with him at that time. Yeah. But I can remember Frank when he finished. He played a lot of games for my first club, Chelsea City. And he went to Chelsea, and he was the first year he was there. He got Player of the Year, and it's the only time the Player of the Year award at Chelsea City, the board had to go to the prison. Because Frank was in Chelsea prison. And they'd done the presentation in Chelsea prison, and they're all walking out, and somebody said, he never come in with it. And that's Frank. Frank was trying to walk out. I mean, he got presented with the Player of the Year, but there was a little bit of trouble there as well about some cloth, wasn't there? We had suit material. He come down. Didn't his brother do a tailor's in Whitechapel or something?
No, I don't know.
Any recollection now?
No.
No. You were in the youth team with him.
Yeah.
He was Millwall's first black player. And that would have been around about 1968, wasn't it?
69.
I think if you've heard from what Brian said, very talented player indeed, England youth player, big and strong centre forward, and like many a young career, just took a couple of wrong turns. I'm not surprised to hear that story about his Player of the Year award.
No, he was.
Well, he was in Porridge. They'd done the film Porridge, and they had like an all-star team were playing the prison team. Well, Frankie was in the all-star team.
Any other stories about him?
Well, they reckon he was going to be the first black boy to play for England.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the Tommy Taylors and all them Stevie Perrimans and Sounises, he was the one.
Yeah. Shame. I mean, I've got a story about Frank as well. I think, was the youth team manager Charlie Vaughan when you were in the youth team? Yeah. Charlie Vaughan, he was with us for quite a long time, and he rather liked Frank. He could see potential in Frank, but Charlie told me for the South East Counties game on a Saturday morning, he'd have to go to Frank Peterson's house to pick him up. Otherwise, he wouldn't be at the game. That sound true to you, Brownie? Could that be right?
I never knew Frank to miss
And he
a game.
said he went round there one Saturday morning and he knocked on the door, no answer. Knocked on the door, no answer. He's sitting there. The milkman comes, puts 2 pints on the doorstep. Right? Charlie looks at his watch. 2 pints of milk had gone. So Frankie had opened the door, got the pints in quick, and he never did play in that game. But that was a great shame. A talent that just wasn't capable of living the right life.
I thought he was going to say, he opened the bedroom window and went, pay him, will you?
That wouldn't have been a surprise either. But anyway, Frank Peterson. How do we get on to Frank Peterson? How do we mention it? Anyway, go on. Anybody else got any observations? Right at the very back.
I'd like to ask a question both to Dennis and Alan, if that's all right.
Of course.
I'd like to ask Dennis, on those few games he returned to Millwall, I think it was at 1975, how that compared to earlier, when obviously we were so close in 72. I remember you came back on loan, maybe played a few games at the end of the 75 season.
Answer that then, we'll do Alan.
I'll come back on loan because I think I was at Hull City, wasn't I?
Yeah.
And I got bombed out of there because Terry Neal, who built me, got the Spurs job, and the new manager come in and they wanted his own players, and I was due to go to America, and Gordon Jago was manager here, and he said, do you want, I can, because we were struggling. I think we got relegated that year.
That's right.
On the last game of the season against Norwich, Martin Peters scored a goal, and I come back and played about 4 or 5 games. And Gordon Jago said, I want to sign you, because I was on a free contract. And I said, well, I've signed up, I'm going back to America, Gordon, and all that. He said, well, you go over there, and he said, and when you come back, he said, come and see me, he said, and I'll sign you on and everything else. Oh, I thought, that's great, so I went to America and had a summer out there playing, come back, first or second game of the season, I come down here, Gordon Jago ignored me. never even said anything. So I thought, oh well, that one's out the window.
That's
Where did you go instead? Wasn't that when you went to Brighton?
Must have been. Went to Brighton. So
who did you play under at Brighton?
The man that took. Well, I went down there. Peter Taylor was the manager. Used to be Peter Taylor and Clough. So Brian Clough had left, and Peter Taylor was the manager. Worst manager that ever run a football club. He was only ever interested in gambling, taking his fat dog for a walk, and
he wasn't doing it himself, Dennis, was he?
No, he wasn't. But he was a vile man. Really, honestly, but he had no manners at all. We played a pre-season friendly against Ipswich, and what's the manager's name? Bobby Robson was manager, and Ipswich had a really good team. I mean, Kevin Beattie, the Dutchman played, what were their names and all that?
Franz Tyson, Arnold Murren.
Yeah, I mean, they had a full team. They come down to Brighton for a pre-season friendly, and it was a really good game. There was about 22,000 people there. Because it was like, really good Ipswich team. They were no mugs. And so the next day, and I think we drew 1-1 or 2-1 or something like that. We beat them. And the next day, I saw Peter Taylor at the ground, and I said to him, it was a good game last night, wasn't it, Peter? He went, was it? I said, yeah. I said, it was a really good atmosphere and a good game, wasn't it? I didn't bother to come. He said, I wouldn't watch a friendly, he said, for all the money in the world. And I thought, you've just got the England, top team in England with the manager like that. They've travelled all the way on a coach, and you haven't even got the decency to greet them and say thanks for coming down. And that was the man. He was just anything. He couldn't get a bet put on in Brighton because he owed so much money to all the bookmakers. We had a midfield player called Ernie Machin, a little guy, and he used to come down for 2 or 3 days training, then go back to Coventry after the game. And Peter Taylor used to give him about £500 in cash to put on up in Coventry because he couldn't get a bet put on down at Brighton.
And that's how you get a statue running to you.
Yeah, and that was all he was interested in.
Amazing.
Not a nice man. I was the year I went there. Sorry, I'll just.
No, go on, we'll get to it
because it involves Millwall. You might remember the game. The first year I went there, Peter Taylor was manager, and I was in the team regular, and we had a really good side. And I got voted in. You know that all the players have a vote every year. The footballers, the best team, and I got voted in the best team and all that.
Well, for that division.
Yeah, for that division. Yeah. So I must have done something good. But anyway, I got injured, and I sort of just wrenched my knee a little bit, and I missed a few games, and we lost a few matches. We were top, and then we come down to about third or fourth, and I've been out for about 4 weeks, 4 games. And I had a fitness test, and all this time he never spoke to me. He never come up to me and said, "How's your knee? How you doing?" Just ignored me completely. I was having treatment. And on the Friday, and it was at Easter, and we were playing Millwall, Brighton, at here on the Saturday. And I have a fitness test on the Friday. So the doctor comes in, and we do the usual, you know, like tackle. Oh, yes, all right, yeah. Kick the ball, yeah, it's all right. So he said, "How's you feel?" So I said, I want to give it a go. I think I'm all right. I hadn't torn a ligament. I just tweaked it a bit, you know. So I said to the assistant manager of Brighton, who was a bloke called Bryan King, who never played football, but he got the job because he used to sell fresh farm eggs at Derby on a Friday. And so when he came to Brighton, Peter Taylor gave him the job as assistant manager. So he said to me, "How do you feel?" So I said, "Yeah, I want to give it a go, Brian." He said, "OK, I'll go and tell the boss." So Fridays we just normally have a kickabout on the pitch. You know, you have a little 5-a-side and nothing strenuous. So I go in and I walk along the corridor and I look up there and I look at the team sheet and I look and I think, I'm not on it. Oh, reserves to travel. Oh, I'm not on it. So I thought, well, that's funny. He's just telling me through the assistant that he wants me to play and go for a fitness test. So I go down the corridor and knock on the door. Come in, walk in, and I see Bryan King, who's the egg man. He's sitting on the manager's table with his feet up like that, reading the Sporting Life. So he said, "Yeah," and I've got a newspaper. Yeah, what do you want? So I said, "Oh, is the boss here, Brian?" He said, "No." I said, "Where's he gone?" He said, "He's gone home. This is like 11 o'clock on a Friday before the game." So he said, "What do you want?" So I said, "Well, I'm just a bit concerned. I'm not on the team sheet and I'm not even a reserve." So he said, "No, that's right." So I said, "Well," I said, "is there any chance can I come with the team and support them and get on the coach and all that?" He said, "No." He said, "He don't want you up there." He said, "You've got to come in training in the morning, Saturday and Saturday afternoon." And they come up here and you beat them 3-0. And obviously he was upset, Brian, Peter Taylor. And we had a centre forward called Fred Binney. Good player, scored a lot of goals. And because he was talking to some fans, he didn't get on the bus. He said to the driver, "Off you go, drive, go home." He left him behind. And that was it. And he never got. He didn't want me to come back here because he knew that, you know, this was my sort of like home club really, and he didn't want, and that was the sort of person he was. So that's the.
So you might have played against Millwall and we might not have won 3-0. You had a question for Alan, didn't you?
Might have been 4.
Yeah, it might have been 4.
Was that the Good Friday game?
It was a Good Friday or Saturday.
I think Billy scored, didn't he?
Yeah.
Who scored?
He thinks Fred Binney might have scored.
No, it might have been 3-1.
Yeah. It's a treble over Redkip. Yeah.
But I know you beat.
There was a massive crowd that day. I think that was during my dad's time as chairman, that game. And I remember I was with him and the police came to him at, say it was 3 o'clock kick-off, about 10 to 3. Mr. Burnige, there's about 10,000 outside. What should we do? He said, open the gate. and that could have been a disastrous decision. But
Mickey wouldn't have done it.
There must have been a lot of people in that ground that day. A lot of people. You had a question for Alan, didn't you? At the back.
Yeah.
You had a question for Al?
Yeah, if my memory serves me well, I can't remember who it was against, possibly Bristol City, but I want Alan to talk us through his goal.
Well, we won 1-0 and so it was a good goal to get. Pardon?
Was it Bristol City?
Yes.
At home?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, for corners and free kicks, Barry was so good in the air. You know, I normally, well, they used to say if I went over the halfway line, I couldn't find my way back to the penalty area. But as I say, on that day, it was a good time to get one because that was the only goal of the game.
He wants you to describe the goal. Come on, you must better remember it.
Well, it's from a corner, and I headed it, and that was Bristol City.
And what was your goal celebration like?
Oh, not too.
In those days, you didn't do one, did you?
No,
just run back to the halfway line.
Get ready for the rest of the game. Yeah.
Was that your only ever goal in the first team at Millwall?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Alan was one of those lads as a player, like with the team, that you wouldn't know he was there all week. He's very quiet and everything, but as a player, he was one of the worst players to have marking you, because he was always there. You'd always get a foot in. He'd always tow it away from you, and he used to frustrate players. You know, like good players like Alan Clark and all them. He'd man mark them and he wouldn't leave them. And he was the most horriblest, not person, but person to have mark you. And he was a credit to us as a defence, because with him, you know, Benny used to say, pick out all their main sort of characters up front and say, Alan, he's you, you know, he's your man. And that was it. He never got a kick. So he was a quiet man, but big asset to the club.
And 9 good years.
Yeah.
Yes, one little question here.
Okay, I've got a question for the lads. For some reason, one match that sticks in my mind from 71-72 was the game on Easter Monday or Tuesday away to Carlisle. It finished 3-3. Millwall nearly won it in the last minute with Barry Bridges. But I just wondered if any of the boys remember that match, and if so, why?
3-3. Bloody long way away.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, I wonder as well.
Was that in that season?
Yeah.
Was it a bus strike?
We were up there anyway.
Was it a Saturday game?
No. It was Easter, either Easter Monday or Easter Tuesday. So it must have been a long way to come back.
I don't think that score was that season. Unless you think it was Sunderland.
No, it was 3-3. It was a nightmare for Easter. And I remember getting the train from Preston.
I mean, Carlisle away, that is a badge of honour. That is... hands up who's ever seen Millwall play at Carlisle away.
On a Tuesday night.
I tell you what, you don't do it every season, do you? Don't do that one. I got stuck up there one year. I missed anywhere getting home, and I went into the Carlisle office and I said, look, I need somewhere to stay. And they said, we'll put you in where the apprentices go lodging. And there was one still there. He said, can you take Mr. Burnige home? And I spent the night in these lodgings where the apprentices were and got the first train. But I haven't been back since. I must say, it's a long way. Imagine being a Plymouth fan and having to go there.
Bad enough being a Millwall fan.
It's the end of the world, isn't it?
Right, come on. Surely something from Ted there at the back. I know you've got a question, Ted.
We heard some stories about Jack earlier, and there's some characters in your team, actually, all know that. The one that always stands out to me was Harry. I'm sure you've all got a story about Harry to tell us.
Yes. Henry P. Cripps.
I think this gentleman was as close to Harry.
You know him well, Dennis. I did know Harry well. He lived near me over at Goodmays, where I lived, and he lived at Chaverley. So the first morning in training, he come round for me. So he showed me the way. I think I was probably driving, because he was a little bit tight, Harry. but he like, you know, he was careful. And on the way home, if I was driving, we used to stop in every betting shop from here back to Chapel Heath, and he liked to bet, and he'd stop at this betting shop, put the bet on, and we'd drive down Deptford and go round by the Cutty Sark, and then so that race had ended then. So he saw another betting shop and he went in that one and saw that he'd won, so he put another bet on, and that's how we went. He used to take us about 2.5 hours to get home. But he was a character, he really was. He was always laughing, not a naturally athletic guy, as you know. I mean, he was very sturdy, but sort of a great character to have in the dressing room, really was. Yeah. And I'll tell you what, I think one year he scored 13 goals from left back.
He got in double figures. He did.
You know, he knew where the goal was. Yeah.
When he signed for us, he signed for Happy Hammers. I mean, and he was very good friends with Bobby Moore. I think he was in the same youth team as Bobby Moore.
Had the same birthday.
And when Bobby Moore was the manager of Southend, Harry was his assistant manager. They were that close. But after he signed for us, every year for about 6 years, we signed another left back to try and replace him. And they all started in the team. I can roll off a couple of the names. Billy McCulloch was one, and Jack Burkitt was another one. They got in. But Harry seemed to always get them out of the team, somehow.
Brian Nichols,
indeed, from Fulham.
Alan Butterfield.
Yeah. He saw them off one after the other.
Eddie Jones.
Eddie Jones, I think, got in the side a bit, didn't he? But in the end, I think what Benny did was to devise a system of play that had Harry in the team, which bears a lot of resemblance to what people play now, with 3 at the back and wing backs. And that meant Harry was nominally left back, but he could get forward. He got double figures, including the vital first goal at Everton, which we'll talk about next year when we're all back. Harry Cripps, Alan.
Well, pretty hard to describe, really.
But is there a story you can remember about him? Something he once did that you can remember, that comes to mind?
No, not really. No, I mean, Dennis obviously knew him quite well because they travelled together, but no, he was, as Dennis said, very good at what he did. He didn't look like an athlete in any shape or form, but on match days he seemed to, the crowd loved him, and he sort of generated him sort of speed around the pitch. And let's say one season, he not only was he doing a good job defending, but he was good in their penalty area for corners and free kicks.
He almost pinched 5 yards at a free kick.
Oh, the crowd loved him.
Do you remember at Norwich when he won a penalty there, when he went and wound him Kevin Keeler?
Yeah.
And he was trying to head the ball out of Kevin Keelan's hands, wasn't he? And Kevin he used to get irate with anybody, Kevin, but he's standing with the ball and Harry's heading it, and he's gone boshing Harry, and Harry's gone down like a shot, hasn't he? And of course won a penalty.
I don't remember that at all.
That was a night game, Brian, wasn't it?
That was Harry.
That was a night game, I remember that one.
And I would say probably that season we missed out on promotion. The game at Norwich was a big game.
It was.
That was a big game. I mean, they shut the gates at 2 o'clock and it was 2-2. It was a hell of a game, wasn't it? I mean,
do you remember travelling to that game?
Do I remember travelling?
I've got a feeling we all walked from the station.
I'm sure that was another game.
We walked from the station one year to go to Norwich.
Yeah,
we did one year.
But Ken Jones, who was in the 59 game unbeaten run, he'd finished by the time of 72. He wasn't in the side. Then I think he went to Southend, if I'm not mistaken.
He come from Southend.
He spoke at Harry's funeral, and the story he told about Harry, I'd like to tell you. He said, when I signed, meaning Ken Jones, I signed, did the same as he did with Dennis. I'll pick you up. No, you drive, right? And so Ken Jones was driving. Harry's in the passenger seat, and as they got on the A13 coming towards the Rotherhithe Tunnel, everyone's got to be in the left lane to turn left. You East End, you people that have ever lived in Essex, there's not many of us here that have, you've got to be in the left lane to go down the Rotherhithe Tunnel. If you're not, you're supposed to go straight onto the city. And in the morning, there was a mile-long queue to go left down the Rotherhithe Tunnel. And Harry said, "No, Ken, just go straight up that lane, and make sure you catch a red." And right at the top, Harry would wind the window down and go, "Excuse me," it's in some foreign accent, "Excuse me, a Rotherhithe Tunnel," and the bloke would go, "Oh, it's here." And they'd always used to let him in. And Ken said, "That's a bloody good wheeze." So the second morning, he did exactly the same thing. He did it quite a few days. That's my Harry Cripps story. Right, we're getting near to the end. Anyone burning to ask a question that I've not seen? Yes, this gentleman.
I just wondered if any Millwall players of that team like to drink.
Dorney. Archduke Charles, Elephant and Castle, your testimonial one. You had a testimonial drink up down the Archduke Charles at the Elephant and Castle.
Did I?
It must have been a fucking good piss up. I can't remember it.
No, I can remember quite several other pubs, the Fellmongers, the different other pubs around the Old Kent Road.
Were there any lockouts on the way back from an away game? Lock-ins, sorry, any lock-ins? Any lock-ins coming from an away game? I heard that was quite a common event. Is that right?
What?
No, I don't think we were.
No.
I don't think we were.
Good boys.
Yeah, I don't think we. I've been at clubs where they drink a lot more than we did at Millwall.
Yeah, weren't it? There's no.
Because Harry wasn't a drinker.
No,
he weren't a big drinker at all.
The only one was Frankie.
Frankie, didn't we? We had some good drinkers.
Frankie liked
Frankie
it.
Saul, I
Yeah.
think, drank,
Frankie Saul, yeah.
Frankie Saul,
yeah. I remember driving back with Frank because I was living in East Anfield and Frank's in Billericay, and it was foggy one night, and I'm driving and Frank's in front of the car. We could not see a thing in front of us. And all of a sudden I think he's gone. Frank's gone. So I stopped the car and get out, and he said, I'm going, "Frank, where are you?" He said, "I'm in a fucking ditch." I said, "Well, how'd you go off that?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I walked there." And then just as we said it, there's a car stuck its head through the fence. Frank, I've never seen Frank move so fast in all my life. And he was pissed, by the way, at the time. He did like to drink, Frank, didn't he?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you and Harry went your way.
And he became friendly with Mickey Kelly. And he used to go up the Albert at Bexley. Bexley Heath.
Well, a friend of mine had a pub called the Crown and Anchor, a fellow called Greg Tarrant. And he also had the Albert at the bottom.
The dive
went
bar.
up to Blackheath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'd end up there. I know my dad did. I know he was in there more than...
There might not have been drinkers, but were there any smokers?
Oh, yes.
Anybody go into the lav at half-time for a quick drag?
Well, I stood behind Kitch once and he had a fag behind his ear. I mean, I used to room with him and it was... I mean, it's murders. I mean, he'd always have a fag on, wouldn't he, Kitch?
I don't know.
Oh, mate, I'm telling you.
Didn't Eamon smoke?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Eamon smoked, yeah.
He what?
Eamon.
And Davey Armstrong, I remember he used to smoke.
There weren't many big smokers, was there?
No. Dave Armstrong. That's
Davey
a name.
Armstrong.
Who?
Davey Armstrong.
Yeah, he'd like the fag.
Yeah.
But there weren't many big smokers that were within the side. Not that I can recollect.
I've got a question, Jeff.
Eamon's got a question. He's signalling to me and he's giving me sign language, and I wouldn't know how to translate what that sign language was, but...
Well, you look like that to me, I don't know what that means.
Eamon, were you trying to attract my attention or ask me a question?
I'd like to ask the question.
Go on.
You raised about people who found players like John Barnes and that. Well, I think amongst the top table there's one player who found a real star for Millwall, and I'd like him to tell us about how he come to bring Paul Ifield to the deck.
What?
Well, don't embarrass me, Dennis, here, will you?
No, when I finished playing, I took the training at Saltdean Football Club, very, very low level. and I used to take the youth team because I used to enjoy it. And through the course of the year, there was 2 good players, and one of them particularly stood out. He had a great attitude. I knew his dad, Everton Ifield, who was martial arts. You wouldn't want to argue with him at all. Big man, but really gentle until you got him in a corner. And obviously Paul was his son. And he was one of these boys that didn't have any attitude. He was tough, but he wasn't aggressive. Really nice lad, lived with his mum, thought the world of her. And it got to about 15 or 16 and I thought, he's got a chance, this kid, you know, he's got something about him. So I phoned Jeff up and before he came to Millwall, I took him to West Ham. And this shows you what happens. He's phoned up Harry, and then Harry, because he was manager at the time, so he put me in touch with...
Harry Redknapp,
yeah. He put me in touch with their, you know, that age group. Yeah, come and bring him over. Okay, so I took him over to Chapel Heath, and he sets up, and he's going to play for this youth team against Welling. Well, Welling youth team had quite a good outfit. They were always strong and tough. Anyway, Paul plays, and there was another young player playing for West Ham that day called Joey Cole, and they was all trying to get him to sign. And so Paul plays, gets the ball, West Ham clear it, and Paul's on the halfway line, so he goes and collects it, centre half comes in, he nutmegs in, pushes it through his legs, goes on at goal, drops the shoulder, goes that way, crash. It's a 25-yard shot right up in the top corner. And all the West Ham players that had been training finished and they clapped. All the first team, they're all clapping. But all the West Ham scouts and all their little, because they all get together, these scouts, and then they're all like, you know that. And they're all talking about Joey Cole. Second half comes, overcomes the corner, Paul Ifield up, boom, goal. Played really well. So they said to me, can you bring it up again? I said, yeah. So I get a phone call from Peter Braybrook, who used to be involved in it, who I played with as well. And right, we've got a game at Bishop Stortford. Can he play? Well, yeah, he can, but I mean, Brighton to Bishop's almost as far as Carlisle. So up we go, and I'm paying for the petrol. He plays at Bishop Stortford, and I'm watching. And all the West Ham people are there, and Paul goes down and scores a goal. Oh, good, 1-0. And then he gets another ball from a throw-in, and he dribbles right along the goal line, squares it across, tap, another goal for someone else. He scores 3 goals in the first half. They're winning 4-0. Thinking, you know, there's got to be talent here. He's really good. And I'm watching, and I got my cup of tea at half time, and the team come out, the West Ham team, and I'm looking at him. Where's Paul? Where's he gone? 5 minutes later, he comes out with his clothes on. I said, what's up? Are you injured? He said, no, they just said that they want to look at someone else. I thought, I've driven all the way from Brighton to Bishop Stortford. He scored that trick, and they pull him off at half time. So I didn't bother. Not that West Ham made an offer, but I phoned Jeff up, and Jeff said, yeah, we'll, have a look at him. The first game they come to look at him, he was absolutely useless. They got beat at Burgess Hill, didn't they?
That was with Bob Pearson.
Yeah. And Paul was, I thought, oh, he's lost it. He's not going to get another opportunity. But they persevered, and they signed, and he's had a great career, and he done really well for Millwall. And you sold him for a lot of money. Sold him for a lot of money.
We did.
But no, he's a smashing boy, and I think he's still out in New Zealand, isn't he?
He is. He's managing a team out there.
Yeah.
But I got to pay tribute to Bob Pearson, who, in his prime, was just an amazing scout. Like everybody else in this world, you don't stay as good as you once were, whether you're a footballer or anything. And towards the end, Bob's eyesight wasn't good and what have you. he didn't realise that he was slipping, but in his prime he was amazing. And what he did with Paul Ifill was typical Bob Pearson. He did have a stinker that first game at Burgess Hill. Then you played at Oakwood by Gatwick. You played a game there, and we played a game at Saltdean. I went to all 3 games with Bob, and Bob said, they're missing something here, find out. So we chatted to his mum, and it turned out, Dennis, you might argue with me here, but you said he was in the youth team. By Christmas, the reserve team manager wanted him in the team as well. They got to the county cup final, intermediate county cup final. Towards the end, he was in the first team. And we worked out Paul Ifill played over 100 games in that season, right? Which is criminal. Because he also played for his college on a Wednesday afternoon, right? No wonder. And eventually we gave him a game in the reserves, and he did all right, but not anything great. And it was Rhino and Macca was the management team, and Bob was very influential. And I remember Rhino saying to Bob, no, he's not ready for us. And Bob said, no, I've just signed him. He's a Millwall player. Because Bob had the authority to do that. And anyone remembers Tim Cahill scoring the semi-final goal, but who made the run and produced a save off the keeper, which Timmy ran in and put in the net for that momentous win. We'll finish on a high with Dennis's signing of Paul Ifill. There has been a dispute between Dennis and myself as to whether he deserved the finder's fee. He clearly did, but I wasn't in a position of authority by the time we sold him.
You said it was in the post.
Yeah, did I? Well, you'd moved, hadn't you? That was the problem. It wasn't easy getting money out of Millwall in those days. But on that note, the great Paul Ifill, that was a hell of a sign. Thank you, Dennis. We've had an hour and a half. We've heard great stuff from all 4. I'd like to thank everybody. Please put your hands together. Thanks Stevie Brown, Alan Dorney, Dennis Burnett, Bryan King.
And last of all, Jeff Burnage. Thanks for coming.
Well, as you have heard over 2 episodes, promotion to the top flight was not to be in 1972, despite some interesting tactics employed at that time. We will be back with some more specials throughout the season. But for now, thanks for listening, and don't forget that the No One Likes Us Talking team return with our Millwall Fans Show on Friday the 22nd of July to herald our 22-23 season in the Championship. Don't miss it.